everybody. Welcome back to Tuesday Tips for Leaders of Volunteers. I'm your host, Dana Litwin, and this week talking about volunteer and team morale and recognition. And there's been, variations on the recognition theme with my guests in previous Tuesday Tips and Priceless Advice videos, but really focusing on team morale and what that means and how to maintain it. And if you haven't felt that in a while, maybe how to organically boost that back up. So when we think about volunteer recognition, we want to go beyond the just a party every year. It's nice to have fun and social time. That's a crucial component, but not just once a year. It's nice to have something to look forward to, but think about volunteer recognition, or really team recognition, as being an opportunity in every moment. So my core creed or saying, if you've watched any of these videos, is every interaction with a volunteer is an invitation to stay or an invitation to go, and smiles are free, thank yous are free. So we can take really any moment throughout the day working with volunteers to recognize their work. Now, I'll also add that having a mechanism of feedback and ideas to action is really crucial for a sense of teamwork and especially good morale when your team or your agency or organization is going through a particularly challenging time. It's good for volunteers to understand that they are valued and heard. So whether that's surveys or a suggestion box virtually or in real life, or just a chance for one-on-one conversations or honest, direct feedback that's still respectful and compassionate, and really the open sharing of ideas, the encouraging of sharing ideas. Now, I'm the first to tell you, not every idea everybody has is perfect or wonderful or worth doing, but at least if there's been a number of suggestions from volunteers on changes or updates or improvements to make in their work or the program, and they start to see at least a few of those taken seriously and put into action, because those really are the best choices to improve the workflow or the project, that's really valuable. So seeing kind of ideas to action is really at the core of helping maintain or create morale. That's tied into shared successes and shared goals. So if you're able to define for volunteers that they have meaningful and impactful work, and then tie that, not just, we think your work's meaningful and impactful, but if you tie that to data points for your agency of hitting certain milestones or certain pillars in the strategic plan, or goals along with a project or completing a special project, when people can really see their work reflected back, not just internally in a newsletter or emails, but also shared with the public, that this is what we've accomplished as an agency for mission impact because of these volunteers, and maybe recognize certain people or certain teams and kind of highlight that. So that's what that shared goal, shared success kind of recognition can look like. And it's also good to think about how you can promote leadership within your volunteer team. It depends on the structure of your agency, but when people are trusted and empowered with leading a project, more responsibility, training other volunteers that are coming on into that role, creating that kind of mentor or new onboarding buddy situation, that also shows that you trust volunteers and that you value their work, and that you hear them when they say, hey, I'm capable of doing this. Or you can just offer it to someone and they can decide to take it or turn it down. But at least knowing that these opportunities for some sort of skill development, leadership development are possible in your agency can be a huge morale boost. So some of the ways that you can identify goals of your agency to your volunteer work, one that's really obvious in healthcare is the measurement for funding of social determinants of health. So healthcare is one example. You can directly, and you should directly, tie volunteer activities with patients into social determinants of health and other factors. If you're not in the healthcare sector, and plenty of people aren't, then tie them into, are there certain grant, requirements or report outs or things that volunteers can be kind of elevated and recognized. And this starts to tie into not just sharing those successes, but really clearly defining what your shared goals are for a team. And anyone who has understanding of what they're doing and understanding of how really showing up and doing the work helps the mission impact, that's a huge, huge way to show that you understand the value of volunteers and communicate that internally to your executives and out to the public or anybody else that is going by your website or your social media or reading your supporter newsletters. It's important to understand that in the worst of times, best of times, worst of times, that you've got each other's back. So the currency that we deal in as leaders of volunteers is trust. We deal in trust as a currency in relationship building. If trust has been broken, it's automatically going to impact morale. So if the agency does something suddenly that impacts volunteer programs without input from Director of Volunteer Services or the volunteer coordinator like you, or volunteers themselves, and it has a negative impact or seems to break the trust, that's much harder to recover from. But if you can keep a healthy communication, two-way communication going with your volunteers, and they can see that their work has impact, their ideas are heard and respected, then that's going to help you a lot in maintaining morale. There's a much deeper dive into this topic with a lot of really great, robust discussion and Q&A in a webinar that I did for Visas Voices in January, and I'll link in the video description below, so you can choose to download, watch through that whole webinar, look at the handout of the slides. But I think for these tips today, we'll leave it there for you to craft morale and keep it healthy and steady, or help repair it if they're going through some challenging times and people are feeling isolated or not as part of the team. So creating that belongingness, that welcoming environment, hearing people, identifying your shared goals of your volunteers per department or per team or per project, and then sharing that success and that good news, that's going to help a lot for volunteer morale and recognition. So let me know what you think of these Tuesday tips, and see you next week for more. Take care.